No one is getting left behind this time. We get there together or never get there at all. We get there together or never get there at all. We get there together, never get there at all. I think that song was written by a man named Lou Aya, who is part of a group called the Peace Poets. And they predate January, so there was a lot of people with skills and talents who came together when the time was right for singing Resistance. It didn't just spring fresh out of the earth in January 2026. Okay. This one is a little longer, but it's fun to sing. It's called Rich Man's House. The words are, I went down to the rich man's house and I took back what he stole from me. Took back my dignity, took back my humanity. Took back my humanity. I went down to the rich man's house and I took back what he stole from me. I think you're singing it. That's it? Okay, sing it. Do we want to do it line by line again, or do we want to just jump in? Just jump in? Yeah, we'll all sing. Well, I went down to the rich man's house and I took back what they stole from me. Took back my dignity. Took back my humanity. Well, I went down to the rich man's house and I took back what they stole from me. Took back my dignity. Took back my humanity. Now it's under my feet, under my feet, under my feet, under my feet. Ain't gonna let no system walk all over me. So we repeat that, and this time we say, I went down to the ice office. I went down to the ice office and I took back what they stole from me. Took back my dignity. Took back my humanity. Well, I went down to the ice office and I took back what they stole from me. Took back my dignity. Took back my humanity. Now it's under my feet, under my feet, under my feet, under my feet. Ain't gonna let no system walk all over me. This time we went to the DHS. Well, I went down to the DHS and I took back what they stole from me. Took back my dignity. Took back my humanity. Well, I went down to the DHS and I took back what they stole from me. Took back my dignity. Took back my humanity. Now it's under my feet, under my feet, under my feet, under my feet. Ain't gonna let no system walk all over me. This time I went down to the Congress. Well, I went down to the Congress and I took back what they stole from me. Took back my dignity. Took back my humanity. Well, I went down to the Congress and I took back what they stole from me. took back my dignity, took back my humanity. Now they're under my feet, under my feet, under my feet, under my feet. Ain't gonna let no system walk all over me. This time we're talking to the tech bros. Well, I went down to the tech bros and I took back what they stole from me. Took back my dignity, took back my humanity. Well, I went down to the tech bros and I took back what they stole from me. Took back my dignity, took back my humanity. Now it's under my feet, under my feet, under my feet, under my feet. Ain't gonna let no system walk all over me. And the Trump White House, well, I went down to the Trump White House and I took back what they stole from me. Took back my dignity, took back my humanity. Well, I went down to the Trump White House and I took back what they stole from me. Took back my dignity, took back my humanity. Now it's under my feet, under my feet, under my feet, under my feet. Ain't gonna let this system walk all over me. Some of you might have seen that before. Yeah. We got a song. We are here with our neighbors. Our love for each other will carry us through. We are here with our neighbors. Our love for each other will carry us through. We are here with our neighbors. Our love for each other will carry us through. Family, we are here with our family. Our love for each other will carry us through. We are here with our family. Our love for each other will carry us through. We are here with our voices. Our love for each other will carry us through. We are here with our voices. Our love for each other will carry us through. Power. We are here with our power. Our love for each other will carry us through. We are here with our power. response verses, and it has a repeating chorus that's easy to learn. The chorus goes, you gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Let's hear you do it. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. And then it goes, put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. So that comes between the verses. Oh, it's in my phone. I have a hard time remembering the words. Okay. So we start out with that chorus. So let's start. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Don't give up hope. Don't give up hope. You're not alone. You're not alone. Don't you give up. Don't you give up. Keep moving on. Keep moving on. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Don't you be scared. Don't you be scared. Don't you despair. Don't you despair. Don't you give up. Don't you give up. The path is there. The path is there. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. I know you're scared. I know you're scared. And I'm scared too. And I'm scared too. But here I am. But here I am. Right next to you. Right next to you. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. We gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. And lead with love. And lead with Let's do another round of applause. Thank you so much for the lovely way to start off our program and kick it off in joy and celebration. Hi everyone, my name is Julie Buona. I use she, her pronouns, and I am with the Washington Fair Trade Coalition. This is a group that
Before we get too far into our program, I do want to acknowledge that we are on the traditional unceded land of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Lummi Nation, the Nuksak tribe, and the Semiahmoo First Nations. And I think that's always important to acknowledge, but especially as we're gathered here on a such a completely arbitrary border that was set up, and the first peoples of this land far predate that border. And always important to, especially as we're here in Solidarity, acknowledge the intersections of Indigenous sovereignty and land back and environmental protection with trade justice and solidarity and economic justice. So I do want to go over a couple things before we get into our program. First and foremost, hopefully everyone here has grabbed some food. There's a little bit of snacks left, but I think we chat around for the most part. But if you want drinks or anything, again, it's back there. There's a bathroom in the kitchen on the left side. Otherwise, there are also bathrooms right on the other side of the kitchen. You kind of have to go through the outside. Also, we'll be here for the most part. We'll move down to the arch near the end. We ask, especially Canadian folks, just make sure to stay kind of in this general vicinity. You certainly don't want to be pushing too far that way or get out of this space. Don't want to create any issues or confusion there. So just wanted to say that. We recognize that, obviously Peace Park has a long history and legacy of being a place of activism and organizing, but things have certainly changed under this administration. The border looks different, more militarized. We do have a peacekeeping team. If you're part of the peacekeeping team, can you raise your hand? Woo, thank you. There's a lot of folks around. Jackie, who has a red vest. I don't think she's around here right now. She's probably taking care of something, but she's our marshal. So, you can come to me if you see an issue or want to talk, and just to make sure everything goes smoothly. Thank you so much to our peacekeepers. Thank you to all of our other volunteers that helped put this together, especially folks that brought in food. Thank you to all the incredible endorsing organizations and supporting organizations and all the incredible organizers that helped us put this event together. And thank you to you all for being here today. So it's a very big group effort, so really appreciate that. So we're here today to confront and reject corporate power and government collusion, and to celebrate cross-border and cross-country solidarity, and to build power together. So the way this is going to go, okay, that's better, is I'm going to give a little bit of context, and then we'll hear from some really incredible community organizers and workers who are doing this work of solidarity. And then a big part of our program is actually community discussion. So on these tables here, you'll notice a little piece of paper with some questions. And we really want to actually come together and build power and think of how we do this cross-border solidarity work into the future. So we'll have that discussion, do a report back, and then for folks who are up to it, we will be going to the After Peace Arch and finishing off with some chants and some pictures and things like that. So that's what that's going to look like today. Again, we're gathering under the banner of the Pacific Northwest Cross-Border Days of Solidarity for People's Trade Agenda. And I do want to contextualize our gathering, to recognize the very real danger and very real attacks that are going on in our community. And I want to start this way as we move into the celebratory aspects, just to kind of recognize and name what's going on and to also connect these things together. We're gathering under increasing attacks on our immigrant, migrant, and refugee communities, on our queer and trans communities, on our Black and brown communities. We're gathering as the U.S. wages yet another war in the Middle East and continues to fund the genocide in Gaza, and has dismantled the global health system that has allowed a devastating Ebola outbreak in Central Africa. And obviously we're gathering under increased surveillance, which we certainly are feeling here on the border. And that's just the start. And it's so important to name and to also connect, right? To understand that all of these systems of oppression are interconnected. That the systematic targeting and detention of our migrant neighbors lines the pockets of the for-profit detention complex, like the one down in Tacoma, the Northwest Detention Facility, which is run by Geo Group. This is the same prison industrial complex that profits from the mass incarceration of Black and brown folk, the scapegoating of trans and queer communities, the besides making windfalls for right-wing corporate media that profits off these attacks, also serve to distract from the corporate powers that are making our lives untenable. The U.S. war machine, from Iran to Palestine to the Philippines, makes unimaginable amounts of money for war profiteers. The privatization of the global health system, makes money for big pharma while millions die of preventable diseases. Tech oligarchs are now becoming trillionaires off of the escalated surveillance and the proliferation of the data centers that pollute our air and water. And so I say all this to kind of trace, right? We can trace a lot of this back to corporate power. And while the situation has certainly escalated and worsened, over the past year and a half of the Trump administration, it didn't start there, right? This system was set up decades and decades ago to allow corporations to amass wealth and profit off the backs of working people on the planet. And tied back to trade, the economic trade system is just another tool that was set up to allow corporations to amass wealth and power free from regulation and accountability. So the World Trade Organization, I'm wearing a 20 years of resistance against the WTO, boo, the North America Free Trade Agreement, the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. This is the same corporate imperialism hiding behind terms like removing trade barriers and facilitating investment. And so as we speak, they're doing it again. Under the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement, or USMCA, our current administration and other administrations, right, of Mexico and Canada are pursuing a rigged trade agenda that puts the interests of billionaires and corporations over those of working people, the planet, farmers, and communities across North America and beyond. And so we're gathered here today to say enough, right? To realize that the only solution to corporate power is solidarity, and the only solution to the fear and isolation imposed by fascism is community. When corporate powers attempt to pit working people and communities against one another, our response is to come together in solidarity to envision a better world, which is the one that we're building. We're not just here to confront corporate power, we're actually here to build something better. A better planet where workers are protected, where rural communities are strengthened, the environment is healthy, migrant communities live safe and dignified lives, indigenous sovereignty is respected, healthcare is a right, and we invest in communities rather than in war and surveillance. And so that's, yes, woo! That's what the people trade agenda is. That's the world we're calling for today, and that communities are calling for across the U.S., Mexico, and Canada throughout May and June under the banner Cross-Border Days of Solidarity. So I'm excited to be here. These conversations are kind of how we build solidarity and how we move forward. So that's what we're here to do today, is build that world one conversation at a time. So with that, I will start passing it off to some really incredible community organizers who are doing this work. First, I'd like to welcome Edgar, who's with he's the Washington State Campaign and Political Director for Independent Farm Workers Union, Familias Unidas por la Justicia, and his strong farm worker roots instead of trying to work it up.
We saw I Love Boosters too.
Awesome. Thank you for inviting us, Julie, and the Washington Fair Trade Coalition. If you ever want like an in-depth training or anything, Julie does a great presentation at one of the immigrants and labor summits in Tacoma. We got to share the space, and the first half was Julie explaining this very complex system of trade and agreements and really complicated things just for normal people to understand. But that explanation, that popular education piece that Julie did was really informative. Even for me, that's been, I think I thought it was somewhat knowledgeable on the topic, but after her presentation, I got to learn a lot more and open my eyes more. So please reach out to the Washington State Fair Trade Coalition for more information and for more of those trainings, because this is just as important as a lot of our other fights that we're taking on right now. So the fight for economic justice, for trade justice, is really important. So again, my name is Edgar. I'm part of Independent Farm Worker Union. We're based here in Burlington, Washington, about 30 miles south from here. We are the largest farm worker union with a collective bargaining agreement that covers nearly now almost 600 workers in Skagit County. Thank you. A lot of our workers also are from Whatcom County, from the Linden area, from Sumas and Bellingham. So, you know, the union covers a lot of ground, and you know, we go all around the state to talk to workers and letting them know about what are some of the issues. Obviously, we have to mention right now, because of where we're at, the issue of this border, and just shocking to see so many border patrol people around here like looking at us and, you know, kind of like being suspicious of us when we're just here at a friendly gathering. So, you know, I don't know if you know this, but the Border Patrol was an offshoot of the Texas Rangers. I'm originally from Texas, so I followed a lot of history. The Texas Rangers' main job was to lynch Mexicans back in the day. The Border Patrol, when they shifted into an official government entity, was not to protect the border, as their name says. It was actually to prevent race mixing from Mexicans to white people. So it's a really complicated white supremacist history that's tied in with a lot of the institutions that we have that have been built over the years, including ICE, which is the modern day. I don't know what you want to call it, but we call it the modern day Gestapo because of the way they've been acting, not only towards immigrants, but to everybody that gets in their way, as was evident in Minnesota, where they were violently attacking peaceful protesters and allies and resistors, and to the way they treat people in detention centers and everything, which actually there's a detention center right over here under this facility that is owned. So, you know, the detention centers are also in Ferndale, in Sumas, Tacoma, obviously. So all these fights are to say that they're linked because at the end of the day, it's about controlling labor and enforcing very laws that are built to uphold the white supremacist structures, even within agriculture. And we can see it all around here by the way they treat farm workers just down the street. I think Grace here, an old friend, we were talking about a lot of the farms here and how much they depend on immigrant farm worker labor. And now the workers are under attack by ICE, by Border Patrol. So, you know, even the food that we just ate probably was touched by an immigrant somewhere along the way. And right now, those workers that are feeding us are under incredible attack, not only by ICE, but by bad bad employers and bad labor policies. Policies that were mentioned that were created like by NAFTA, by CAFTA, by the World Trade Organization, these multinational corporations that go into our homelands and force our people to migrate through the structures that they set up under policy, under these like legal things that they set up. And yeah, boo. So these corporations that are very prevalent here are setting up structures that force migration, and then when we get here, we don't have the rights or protections that we need to live well. Not to be rich, not to exploit anyone, but just to get by, just to pay bills, just to pay rent, have enough to eat. So, you know, right now, this is the struggle for us as farm workers, and one of the few unions that exists in the whole country, uplifting the voice of farm workers and as well as other workers that are in struggle. Right now, Washington State has the ability to give collective bargaining rights to farm workers that is for the employers to recognize workers that are organizing and building their own unions. Washington State has the ability to pass this law in 2027. So we're going to ask your help. If you do lobbying, if you connect with your representatives, or just care about food and eating and who picks and packs your fruit, support us in this bill that would give collective bargaining rights, the only sector of workers that is not granted this right. Give this right to workers for the first time here in Washington State. That, we're going to ask for your help coming up this next legislative session. And as well, one of the biggest things that we've been monitoring is the continued growth of the H-2A guest worker programs here in Washington State, which has grown over 1,000% since 2005. This is again the managed migration model that neoliberalism has been really good at promoting, trying to offer these visas to people from Mexico, Jamaica, from the Philippines as well. They offer guest worker programs to work in the field, but when they get here, they're under the most exploitative conditions, denied many of the basic labor protections, all for the benefit and the bottom line of these multinational corporations and plantation-like farms. So, we have to be against the guest worker programs. We have to be against ICE. We have to be against all these structures and institutions that are promoting their worldview and pushing it down on us. What we want is the trade justice agenda that Julie had mentioned earlier, one that comes from the people that are creating all that wealth, working the lands, and work at everywhere we go and are trying to just get by. Again, we're not trying to be rich. We're not trying to be rich from exploiting other people or the land. We just want to be well and protect our friends and our families. So thank you again for having us, and look forward to continuing the fight with you all.
Thank you, Edgar. And yeah, thank you so much for telling us the ways in which we can plug in with PJ's work, right, supporting the farm workers during the legislative session. Something that I really want folks to come away with this space is obviously a renewed sense of community and joy and hope, but also real tangible, ways that you can plug into some of these movements. So next we will have Jen, who uses she/her pronouns and is a Gen X healthcare professional and U.S. Canadian dual citizen who's been living in D.C. for 13 years. Like a lot of us, she watched the U.S. election results roll in November 24 and stunned disbelief and decided to hold one of Metro Vancouver's first Tesla takedowns in 2025. And in June of 2025, she and another U.S. Canadian dual citizen started Indivisible Vancouver. So she's honored to be sharing this powerful space with such wonderful people. Jen?
Adjusted for the short person. Hi. So thank you so much for that introduction, Julie. And I realize that in this crowd, I do need to clarify that Indivisible Vancouver, BC, not Washington, not to be so as to not be confused with Indivisible Greater Vancouver down here in Washington State. I thought about maybe naming us Vancouver the Lesser, but that just didn't have the same ring to it. So, okay. Does anybody here not know what or who Indivisible is? Okay, cool, excellent. So we don't have to go into that. This group now has about 4,000 groups across the U.S. In February 2025, right? Yeah. In February 2025, Indivisible Ottawa in Ontario came to be, June 2025, Vancouver, and in October, Indivisible Quebec. There are also now 30 chapters worldwide, including Mexico, Europe, Australia, organized under the umbrella organization of Indivisible Abroad. Thank you. That really underscores why we're here. We are all connected. So here in Van, we started Indivisible Vancouver. We is Jim and I. He isn't able to be here today, but our story and the reason for us starting this is that we had to do more. Now, my version of doing more is that I was on the couch doom scrolling, and I had to stop, and that's what got me to do the Tesla takedowns. Jim's version of doing more, he was calling and writing to his reps. He's a Pennsylvania voter, and to a point that now his reps now contact him when they're having a town hall. So the both of us just had to do more. So here we are now. So since we've been started, we have had 7 events, including the 3 No Tyrants events in Vancouver, it's no kings down here. We decided to call it No Tyrants because we do in fact have a king. The 4 other events, one of them was a rapid action event that I think is worth talking about because it's victory. So Jim Pattison is a BC billionaire. He owns 8 grocery chains, over 20 car dealerships, several advertising agencies, and his name is on several medical buildings in the Lower Mainland, including one in my neighborhood, so I get to see it like every day. Back in January, he also owned a warehouse in Virginia, which he was in negotiations with DHS to sell to become an ICE facility. So let's just call it what it is, a concentration camp. On a Sunday in late January, Emily Lowen, the leader of the BC Greens Party, and a 25-year-old force of nature, did an Insta reel where she talked about this. Then on Tuesday, she reached out to us and said, "Hey, let's have an event about this in front of Jim Pattison's warehouse in front of Jim Pattison's headquarters in downtown Vancouver. So let's do this on Friday." So commence whirlwind of planning an event. And on Wednesday, the Jim Pattison Foundation came out with a statement. This is my paraphrasing, not what they said. We're just trying to sell a building. We know that this is a hot button thing, but then on Wednesday, so that happened on Wednesday. On Friday morning of the event, the Jim Pattison Foundation came out with a very terse 1-sentence statement saying the sale was not going to proceed. So our protest became a party, and it showed us that taking collective action works. Sometimes the progress that we make is so incremental it can be hard to see, but this was so concrete and so gratifying, as well as a couple weeks later, Rachel Maddow was speaking at UBC and congratulated us. And that was a bit of a moment. And she said that we, collectively, can use our knowledge of their interests to change their plans. I don't think for a second that Jim Pattison had like a spasm of integrity or a shred of shame and decided to change his course of action. I think he's 90 years old and wants to be known as a big philanthropist, which he is. He has built entire hospitals. So although it doesn't matter, we have contributed to the absence of an ICE facility. Yeah. Thank you. So something that I like about Indivisible is that the mothership, as I call it, oh, by the way, shout out to my Indivisible siblings from Bellingham who are here today. So, yay. So something that I like about the broader organization is that they provide structure, they provide training, they provide amplification, but the local groups are all autonomous because local needs differ from community to community. A group in LA has very different needs than a group in rural Tennessee. So what's nice about Canada here is that we're in a unique position to take different kinds of actions. We, of course, oppose the U.S. administration for, redacted, for reasons. But we're also committed to Canadian sovereignty. And stopping the spread of what's happening here from happening here. So, we have an upcoming action, and one of our first non-protest actions that is taking aim at far-right ideology. Provincial level government, equivalent to state level government, is the Legislative Assembly, and the elected officials are the members of the Legislative Assembly. One of Vancouver's 12 MLAs is a residential school denier who was kicked out of the Conservative Party for publicly mocking residential school survivors' testimonies. She then made her own party using public funds, and 6 months later, her own board used language like instability, paranoia, erratic behavior, and abusive conduct, ousted her, and she was reinstated 8 days later. Though, as I looked at the news article, it felt more to me like she was still proclaiming herself the leader of this party, more so than an official reinstatement. Every major Indigenous leadership body in British Columbia has publicly called upon her to resign, and so has our BC Premier, David Eby. A group of residents from her riding, from her district, have created a campaign to recall her. They need to gather 16,000 signatures from residents of her riding by July 20th. The threshold being met will then trigger a by-election. Indivisible Vancouver is lending its support to their canvassing efforts because we recognize the far-right ideology needs to be stopped before it has amassed power. We have an opportunity to stop it in our own backyard. I don't know that we have a lot of Canadians here, but if you'd like to get involved with Indivisible Vancouver, reach out to us on our Facebook page. We do have a website that needs work. In related news, we're looking for a website person. So Jim, as I said, is unable to be here today, but he shared something at our March 28th No Tyrants rally that 5 words, 2 sentences. That outrage is not sustainable. Love is. In this context of what we're doing, what does love look like? It looks like mutual aid. It's using whatever privilege that we have to support those without it. All of us have some kind of privilege. Sex, gender, race, financial, any privilege that we have, we can leverage to help those that don't have it. And we can talk some more about that in our breakout groups that Julie has mentioned. You know what we don't want? We don't want billionaires. We don't want a rich trade agenda. We don't want a polluted environment. We don't want human rights abuses. So let's do some thinking and talking about what we do want. We want an inclusive democracy, civil rights, due process, fair trade, national sovereignty. And all of these things are about having love and respect for people we haven't met. Let's let that be our guide. I'd like to finish with a request for some help from Edgar and Ray, and another message for us to go home with in our hearts. This is your world. These are your people. You can live for yourself today, or help build tomorrow for everyone.
Ça c'est notre monde, ça c'est notre peuple. Vous pouvez vivre pour vous-même aujourd'hui ou aider à bâtir un futur pour tout le monde.
es tu mundo. Estos son tu gente. Puedes vivir para ti mismo hoy o puedes construir el mañana para todos.
Thank you so much, Jim, for that, and to Equity Right for finishing out that powerful slogan. So next, I am honored to welcome up Yen with the International Migrants Alliance, which is a group of a global alliance of migrant refugees and displaced peoples, made up of them and led by them, that work to defend and promote the rights and well-being of all victims of forced migration across the world. So take it away, Yen. Well, just for the short people. But hi everyone, I'm Kian. I'm a member of Migrante Youth, Serenity Valley. And it's really an organization that's based in South Seattle that fights for the rights and welfare of migrant youth and students and for genuine democracy and liberation in the Philippines. For Migrante USA, it's really a member of the International Migrants Alliance. And as Julie introduced, EMA is an alliance made up and led by grassroots migrants, refugees, and displaced people that fights for the rights and welfare and ultimately an end to the roots of forced migration. And I know some of our Canada EMA organizations might be in the audience today too, so shout out. And hello. But as for some of the history, the alliance was founded by migrant domestic workers in Hong Kong in 2008, and migrant workers from Thailand, the Philippines, Indonesia, and other countries facing abusive working conditions, wage theft, and human trafficking. And from these seeds of resistance, EMO has really grown to include more than 200 organizations in 35 different countries. So we're really here today because as migrants, we know neoliberal free trade agreements are what drive forced migration. They devastate conditions in our home countries, attacking human rights and workers' rights, open up our homelands for foreign extraction, and expand corporate power and profit across the global south. We've seen these neoliberal exploitative policies in our homelands deregulate, denationalize, and liberalize trade, devastating migrant workers. And for the case of the Philippines, trade agreements like the rice liberalization law outprice local rice in favor of imported rice. And Pax Silica, which is more of a U.S.-based or U.S.-led initiative. Oh, my notes just refreshed. Sorry, give me a minute. So back to Pax Silica. It gives foreign countries like the U.S. more access to plunder natural minerals, exacerbate the conditions of poverty for our people. And the result is thousands and thousands, 10,000 Filipinos leaving the Philippines every day to find work abroad just to earn a livelihood. And so shame on that. Shame. And as EMO leads to the U.S.'s relentless greed and insatiable hunger for domination, ripping resources from the global south without a shred of remorse. And when people dare to resist, the U.S. responds with brute force, right? Bombing our homelands, turning our land into war zones, orchestrating coups, and making life unbearable. Creating refugees, forcing millions of migrants to leave their home countries. But we will not let that break us, because as EMO, we see migrant workers leading the fight for their rights and an end to the root causes of forced migration. And locally in Washington, we are waging campaigns for housing justice for migrants and asylum seekers facing eviction. We're also waging campaigns to get ICE out of our communities, from our workplaces to our schools and neighborhoods. And we are waging campaigns to free those migrants forced abroad and into ICE detention. Our grassroots alliance has worked with other grassroots organizations as well, unions and faith communities, and have fought fought for the release of over 7 Filipinos in Washington. The release also of Boston community members, veterans, and more, such as the 9 of Las Madres Unidas en la Lucha, who are going just this month too. And we continue to uplift the call to free all migrants. Earlier this month, EMA mobilized and gathered over 150 migrant workers for a grassroots migrants and refugee forum to organize our demands and bring them to the United Nations, especially in response to the UN, who blocked many migrant workers from participating in the IMRF, which stands for the International Migrant Review Forum, and review of the implementation of the Global Compact on Migration, or GCM. And the UN has yet to really ensure the rights, livelihood, and security of migrants through the GCM, and even further refuses to take a stand when rampant human rights violations are perpetuated by member states, such as the torture of CIPA in El Salvador, the massacre of the Negros 19 in the Philippines, the U.S.-Israel genocide in Gaza, and the war in Iran. These same countries lead initiatives of the United Nations, such as El Salvador, co-initiating the GCM, and the current bid for the Philippines for the UN Security Council. And so we say no to any fascist leadership in the UN, no to Marcos on the UN Security Council, and no to fascist dictators leading the GNC. Asking for folks to keep their eyes on the UN Security Council vote, which will happen on June 3rd, and for local calls to action, and recognizing really that it's through our collective power and unity that we'll be able to really resist and fight back against our exploitation, and ultimately to see an end to U.S. imperialism. And also inviting folks here to join EMA or to join the Defend Migrants Alliance. And with that, I'll end on a chant. Long live
International solidarity!
Long live
International solidarity!
Thank you. Really important to be in solidarity, really representing and we will certainly be doing those chants again once we get down to the arch. Next, we have Imelda Salinas Gomez. Imelda has been a caregiver for 26 years and is a proud member of SCIU 775 and an ambassador of One America. Take it away, Imelda.
Hello everyone, my name is Imelda Salinas. Everyone can hear me? Okay. Well, my name is Imelda Salinas, and I am a caregiver and a proud caregiver from the SCIU 775, and also ambassador for One America. What we do in our union is that we fight for the ones that can fight for themselves. Also, we help build and organize people to fight for the rights. At this moment, we're having a lot of difficulties, and we have gone to rallies and went to the detention center in Tacoma, where they have held all these people that are there, missing their families, they're not having enough food, they don't have medication, they're being treated really badly. And we go and support them. We went to see the mother on Mother's Day. So what we do in One America is that we help people become citizens. We have clinics, and we have volunteers to do paperwork, lawyers, paralegals, and a lot of volunteer people that come together to help others. And so, with that being said, I have my sisters right here. Lucy, Lopez, Vanessa, and Dona Chuy. We all came from Tri-Cities. I don't have anything planned to talk about, but if you have any questions, I can ask anything. I mean, it's we're all here together to organize, right? We were invited at the Tacoma Summit, where we all hear all the speakers and all the people that come together. We also have a group of People's Coalition, and we also help people, immigrants, that have the know your rights and emergency response, and we also have packages to help people that they're being held or they don't have food, all the immigrants that they need any type of help, like a little bit of shelter, a little bit of food. We do as much as we can, and we fight for all of them, and that's how we got together, and we keep building more and more and organize more. Well, thank you. You guys have a good day.
Thank you, Imelda, and again, thank you all so much, and shout out to our little contingent that Imelda brought all the way from those Tri-Cities. So next we have Christina with Anaheim Western Washington University, which is a youth and student activist organization fighting for national democracy in the Philippines through direct action, advocacy, and education. Let me know if this is too quiet. Yeah. All right. Thank you, God. Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. Ako po si Christina, and I am speaking on behalf of Bayan Washington, an organization advocating for genuine democracy and liberation in the Philippines, as well as Anaheim Western Washington University. We represent Filipino-American youth and students attending Western Washington University, and also just living in the Bellingham area. So today I'll be walking us through some of the different trade and military agreements that serve as a vehicle for U.S. imperialism, both in the Philippines and globally, as well as some of the work that we've been doing to fight against these anti-people policies and how folks can get involved in that. So, who here has visited the Philippines before? Yeah. Many who have visited the Philippines can attest to the land's richness. There's a lot of minerals, copper, gold, other minerals, rice, mangoes, bananas, sugar. There is more than enough food to feed the country's population, and yet an overwhelming amount of the Philippines' resources are actually shipped out to foreign countries. To make up for the vast amount of resources exported overseas, the Philippine government strikes deal after deal with foreign investors to find imports. So last year, the dictator, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., met with Donald Trump and established a 19% tariff on Philippine imports to the U.S. This is all while the U.S. enjoys a zero tariff access to the entire Philippine market. So it's extremely unequal. Through these one-sided trade and military agreements, the U.S. and Philippine governments betray the interests of the Philippine people and people worldwide to further the U.S. war machine. One of the biggest, most recent examples of this is this last February, the Philippines and U.S. signed the Critical Minerals Agreement, which gives existing U.S. supply chains access to the Philippines' vast reserves of critical minerals, such as nickel, copper, and cobalt. And if folks aren't aware, these minerals are very essential to manufacturing different weapons of war, so from fighter jets and missiles to the computer chips and data centers that power these AI systems that we've seen used in U.S.-backed wars of aggression, like the continuing genocide of the Palestinian people. Back home, this resource extraction causes damage to the environment, obviously, displaces indigenous peoples across the archipelago, and makes the Filipino people an unwilling target in the U.S.'s imperialist wars. To that end, The Philippines has long enticed U.S. leaders due to its strategic location as an archipelago just a few hundred miles away from the coast of China, which is the U.S.'s #1 imperialist rival. Over $500,000 are sent from the U.S. to the Philippine government for military purposes every year, going to things like the Balikatan War Games, which is a yearly exercise where thousands of U.S. and Philippine troops partake in a quote-unquote military theater to essentially practice and strategize for war with China. But we know that these are nothing more than intimidation tactics to flaunt the U.S. and Philippines and other imperialist powers' weaponry and manpower, as well as just in general further assert U.S. dominance in the Asia-Pacific region. You can see that this widespread state-sanctioned violence and militarism also takes on the form of political targeting, something that we here in the States are all too familiar with. We see the amount of surveillance here. We know that there is a risk. But yeah, in both the U.S. and the Philippines, the government's fascist attacks are directed at the most exploited and oppressed, as well as those that speak out against this rotten system, right? In the Filipino community, we continue to mourn the loss of our dear friend, Kai Soram, who was also a youth and student activist and organizer from South Seattle. She was killed by the Philippine military in Negros Occidental on April 19th and 20th, so just last month, alongside 18 other individuals, most of whom were civilians. They were killed simply for integrating with and learning about peasant farm worker struggles against big corporations, big plantations. This kind of fascism and political repression that led to the murder of the Negros 19 is something we are also seeing in our Defend Migrants fights through the abductions of migrant workers and labor organizers here in Washington State. We've also noticed, we just read about this a couple days ago, but we're noticing more transfers in the Northwest Detention Center more than ever, and we know that this is because ICE and GEO Group are just trying to stifle the organizing that is happening, both within the detention center, so like between detainees, as well as the work that us organizations on the outside are doing to advocate for those inside. But I think the point here is that, they're scared. They're trying to do these transfers, make sure people are separated from each other because they know when we work together, when we fight together, we do win. We get, as my friend was saying, we have at least like 7 Filipinos released from detention. Like, we did all that. We did all that. Yeah. In the face of all of this injustice, Anak Bayan Western, Bayan Washington, and other organizations in the state have continued to tirelessly educate, mobilize, and organize our broader communities in our fight against the fascist, reactionary U.S. and Philippine governments. Just this Wednesday, we launched the Defend Negros campaign, which calls for justice to be served for the Philippine military and others who perpetrated war crimes and violated international humanitarian law in Negros, like we saw last month. It also calls for U.S. legislators to condemn the murder of the Negros 19, investigate if U.S. security assistance or weapons were used in the massacre or previous attacks, knowing the military ties between the two countries, as well as to, importantly, stop U.S. military aid to the Philippines through the passing of the Philippine Human Rights Act, or PHRA. We have also campaigned for U.S. out of the Philippines. Again, on the PHRA, we've been pushing legislators such as Camilla Jayapal to champion the PHRA to get it to pass, and she has been very supportive of that. We've also been holding over past few months educational discussions and mobilizations to expose the role of Washington State's very own Joyce Louise McCord in the continued militarization of the Philippines. So, kind of in conclusion, as part of our solidarity building today, we put forth a call to all the organizations present here to endorse these campaigns and continue to build with us in these very intertwined fights. We also invite the organizations here today to join the different alliances fighting for migrant rights and global human rights, which were a little bit mentioned before, including the Defend Migrants Alliance, the International Migrants Alliance, as well as the International Coalition for Human Rights in the Philippines, who have really been advocating for the passing of the PHRA. The liberation of the Filipino people is inseparable from the fight and struggle of all oppressed and exploited people across the world. There are so many different ways to get involved. I just went over a few of them, but there's so many more different ways. And we hope that today, in conversation with y'all, we can continue building these connections. Maraming salamat, thank you, and we hope to see you in the fight. So finally, we have Maya Morales with Washington People's Privacy. Maya is a legislative advocate, educator, artist, and organizer. And in 2021, they founded Washington People's Privacy with the goal of helping to lift up people's legislative advocacy and action and grow awareness and literacy about tech and data privacy issues across movements in Washington, the big, our big tech state. So take it away, Maya.
I like to hold the microphone. I would just like to say it is cold under these trees. And I would love for all of you who are cold to go sit in the sun. I have to stand here because this is where our live stream is. But you don't have to sit here. You can go sit in the sunshine if you would like to. So if you want to do that, please stand by it. Hi everyone, my name is Maya Morales. Thank you for that kind introduction. I also want to just do some thank yous really quick and say thank you so much to each of you who came here to the border to do this mobilization and this gathering. Just huge gratitude. It took courage, it took effort, it took time, all of it. Thank you. Thank you to the folks who are keeping peace so much. There are folks who've been organizing this event for months who are spending most of it running around keeping peace, and I just really appreciate them. Just thank you to all of you who have taken a part, brought food, picked up food, got somebody in your car, all of it. I just want to make sure you do all those thank yous, so thank you. So Washington People's Privacy is an entity, it is not a formalized 501c, but what we focus on is lifting up people into action on tech issues. Have you heard, raise your hand if you've heard of flock cameras? Okay. So flock cameras, otherwise known as ALPRs, automated license plate readers, have become a big issue all over the United States. And they became a big issue in Washington. University of Washington did some research, got some public records data, and realized that that information was going to us. And that we really needed to cut off access to license plate reader data. And so that's become this just burgeoning movement. And right now, this is actually a discussion at the federal level. So we passed kind of a not-so-great bill in Washington State that put in some protections but then took some away. There is a deflock movement all over Washington State, and there are many locations, like local counties and cities, that are banning ALPRs, that are regulating them, that are getting them turned off, and that is amazing because our movements have trickled up, right? And so now the federal government has a bill in front of it. And I want folks to know that our Rep. Larson, actually, who many of you are represented by in Congress, Representative Larson actually unfortunately blocked a good amendment to an ALPR bill recently that would have actually helped us ban ALPRs on highways. And he blocked it. So one of the actions I want to just start off and encourage you to take is reach out to Rick Larson. Reach out to Senator Murray and Senator Cantwell. Tell them how you feel about ALPRs. Tell them how you feel about big tech. Don't be shy about it. Learn their numbers, write it on your bulletin board, and call them every day. But certainly Rick Larson needs to hear from everybody, yes? Yes, we have 1 o'clock. Thank you, Sam. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about big tech billionaires. Because right now, I think so many people who have spoken today have really laid out the groundwork for all of the interconnected issues and the fact that we are increasingly kind of battling a world that is big tech royalty and billionaires over everyday people. This is our current fight, and it shows up in countries all over the world. It shows up everywhere. And it shows up in, Anna Brown gave a great introduction to the critical minerals fight, right? I myself am from a mixed family. Part of my family is from Bolivia. You might know that right now Bolivia is rising up because they, like us, have a totally like imperialist, wild president who is siding with billionaires instead of people. What is that about? It's about access to lithium. It's about access to rare earth minerals. It's the same fight that's happening in the Philippines, right? So we're seeing this all over the world, and one of the most important things we can do here in Washington State is get involved in the local fights that help us block those big tech billionaires. Because we start local and we start small, but it makes a big impact. So there's two other things I want to kind of like put y'all on notice about as actions that are upcoming and that are about to happen in about a week and a half nationally. One of them is FISA. I don't know if you've heard of FISA, Section 702. FISA is the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, and this has been drastically expanded. And it allows ICE, DHS, all the federal agencies you can think of to get data and do surveillance on Americans, right? This is not supposed to be something that our Fourth Amendment allows. But this is the bill that allows it. And so one of the things that I'm going to ask you to do is follow Washington People's Privacy. If you're on Instagram, we do occupy big tech platforms, and we still say what we need to say. It is the @ WA People's Privacy. Look out for some actions on FISA that you can take, and there's also going to be actions on that ALPR bill at the federal level. So those are what I want to leave you with, and I feel like I'd love to just quickly take a poll about data centers if I could. Is there anybody here who kind of feels like we don't want a data center in our backyard? I just kind of want to get a feel. Yeah, I think the majority of us have candidates. Like, we don't need this. So I also want to just call in the fact, as we stand on a border, right, where the main authority here is federal, that our federal government has just released this bogus, crazy classification that anybody who's opposing data centers is an anti-tech extremist and a domestic terrorist. Right? So, and that is just bonkers. It is bonkers. It is your free speech. It is your right to think what you think and say what you want to say and to have some feelings about big tech billionaires versus the people. It is our right to do that. And so we are going to continue resisting that. We're going to stand on the border and say that. We're going to say that in every city. We're going to say it everywhere. So thank you so much for being here today, y'all. I think I'm the last speaker. And I feel like that's cool. So I'm going to go over there and finish up the area. Thank you all. Nice to see you.
Okay, so what we're going to do now, feels like everyone's so far away. What we're going to do now is, first of all, again, thank you so much to our incredible speakers and incredible community organizers that are really doing the work, and it's always great to be in these spaces with so many amazing people doing all different types of work, but seeing the ways in which it all connects. So thank you. Let's do another round of applause for all our speakers. So now what I would like to do, and we're going to have to kind of figure out how to do this in the best way with folks not necessarily being at tables, but like I said at the top of the program, one of the big goals of the celebration is to strategize together and build power moving forward. So on the tables, and I will come over there as soon as I'm done over here to give out some questions, but there's a few questions just about, what does solidarity mean to you? How do you see solidarity happening in your community? What are the barriers to solidarity, and how do we overcome these? And then how do we continue to build solidarity past this event? And so, I really want to talk about that, right? I want folks to talk amongst themselves and get connected with folks and talk about how we movement build together and what we need to do that. And so my favorite, the best thing would be for folks to take notes because we want to capture as much as possible, but I understand that is probably difficult on the ground. I'm going to pass around some pens. There's some paper that I'm going to be passing out. Folks could jot some notes of what your little group is talking about, or if you have a phone, you can take it there and send it my way. But I would really love to capture what folks are talking about. Because these conversations are the ways in which we actually build power, right? It informs how we organize the Washington Fair Trade Coalition and how we build solidarity with other folks. So we're gonna, I didn't check the time. We're gonna go for about 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And then, we can do like a quick report back, and then we'll close out by moving to the arch and taking some pictures and things like that. So again, get into like smallish little groups, and we will have a cool community conversation.